Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you are in Europe. Good morning if you are in the Caribbean. The webinar is about to start. Thank you for coming, and we hope you will have good information from this webinar. To start, Honorable Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa, Minister of Agriculture of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Mr. David Mogollon, Head of Cooperation of the Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS. Good morning again if you're in the Caribbean, and good afternoon if you are in Europe. My name is Tamira La Cruz. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on agriculture, fisheries, and food processing. This webinar follows the completion of the third study in a series of studies commissioned by the European Commission to raise awareness on the business opportunities related to CARIFORUM EU Economic Partnership Agreement, the EPA, and to enable the European Union private enterprises to foster valuable business partnerships in the region. Before I give the floor to our distinguished speakers, I would like to thank you again for your participation. The webinar will consist of a number of plenary sessions with a Q&A and polls at the end of each. These will be followed by breakout rooms per subsector, where you'll be able to discuss opportunities and challenges in each subsector more thoroughly. We would like to give participants the opportunity to listen to all speakers in the time they have reserved for this webinar. So I ask the speakers to kindly observe the time allotted to you. I'll give you a notice when you have 1 or 2 minutes left. I take the opportunity to remind everyone of the Zoom etiquette for the event, which you have seen or seeing on your screen. Please note the webinar is being recorded. Feel free to keep your cameras off in case you would not like to feature the recording. Remember also that we do live in an age of comments going viral. I am now pleased to invite Mr. David Mogollon, Head of Cooperation of the Delegation of the EU to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean States, CARICOM and CARIFORUM, our host for this event, to open the webinar. Mr. Mogollon, the floor is yours. Mr. Mogollon, you can go ahead.
I think that David got disconnected. I don't see his image anymore.
Okay. In that case, we shall go on. Is there someone from the delegation speaking, Mr. Alves Pereira?
Well, I'm from the EU delegation in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm just
Okay.
watching.
So we do not know if he will come back. In that case, we shall continue then, or perhaps Mr. Arek, would you like to say something on behalf of the delegation? Arek? Okay.
They're both located in Barbados, and
so they're both there.
Yeah, if there's an issue in Barbados,
okay. Okay, so then we will go ahead with the Minister. It is my pleasure to invite the Honorable Zulfikar Mustafa, Minister of Agriculture of Guyana, for his opening remarks. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Let me join with the Chair in extending a warm welcome to all joining this webinar. Today's event is indeed well-timed. I know for a fact that many CARICOM member states have been working to create an environment for private sector investments in cross-border production and trade in key commodities to achieve Vision 25 by 2025. And as such, this initiative is most welcome. I want to express my sincere gratitude to the European Union delegation for organizing this event as part of CARIFORUM EU EPA Policy Support Facility, PSF project. With Guyana having lead responsibility for agriculture, agricultural diversification, and food security, and as the chair of the Ministerial Task Force on Food Production and Food Security CARICOM, I am delighted to have this opportunity to deliver introductory remarks on your subject, agriculture, fisheries, and food are integral sector with immense potential in our region. Based on your agenda today, I noted that there are many opportunities being presented, and it is my hope that you will all take these seriously for accelerating our implementation of Vision 25 by 2025. More importantly, investing in CARIFORUM agriculture sector is investing in the food and nutrition security of the region. A 2022 survey by Caribbean Community, CARICOM, and the United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, indicated that nearly 4.1 million people, or 57% of the population, face food insecurity. As such, our initiatives are aligned with food security as the main goal and aims to achieve a region with a competitive, innovative, dynamic, and integrated food and agriculture sector. As government, we have been creating enabling environments for investment by ensuring our policies support growth and improve private sector investment for improved competition, improved value chain performance, protection from private sector investment, for private sector investments, and for logistical advancement for interregional trade. However, the private sector involvement in our collective efforts toward achieving Vision 25 by 2025 is critical, as the public resources are not sufficient by itself. Their roles and participation will be a deciding factor if we'll be able to achieve our set goals and targets, as well as how fast we achieve those. Therefore, I consider today's webinar a very important step towards achieving Vision 25 by 2025 by promoting the development of the agriculture sector through EU investment and trade by seizing the opportunities offered by CARIFORUM EU Economic Partnership Agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, there have been a visible shift in CARICOM's focus with regards to ensuring food security and promoting self-sufficiency, thus creating an opening for diverse investment opportunities and a competitive edge in the production of poultry, corn, soya, niche vegetables, meat, goat, mutton, beef, pork, root crop, Irish and white potato, sweet potato, yams, herbs and spices, ginger, black pepper, and turmeric, fresh fruits, fisheries, including aquaculture, and etc. The 25 by 2025 initiative of CARICOM is aimed at reducing extra-regional agri-food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. Additionally, the initiative addresses cross-cutting issues such as barriers to trade, financing, developing insurance, market facilitation, and transportation, all of which are necessary to ensure a favorable investment climate in the region. There are also significant opportunities in agro-processing, shipping and logistics, and other support services to food and agriculture. As we further our relationship with the EU, under that we encourage the EU private sector to foster valuable agribusiness partnership in the region. The opportunities for investment are vast as the region pushes the food security agenda. Through collaboration, knowledge sharing, and partnership, we can build a resilient and sustainable agriculture sector that benefits our nations and foster regional integration. I am confident that our discussion will pave the way for transformative actions and a prosperous future in agriculture, fisheries, and food processing in the CARIFORUM region. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to allude again to the importance of today's discussion. Let us hope that every one of us make a contribution towards ideas that will help us to achieve Vision 25 by 2025. I wish each and every one of you success and hope that we have a successful discussion. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your remarks. I am glad that you introduced the not just the vision 2025, but also the strategy, and that you highlighted the need for private sector investment, knowledge sharing, especially through the EPA. Thank you very much for that. We will go forward. Mr. Mogollon, you're back with us. Thank you very much. I invite you to make your opening remarks. Please go ahead. Mr. Mogollon, the head of the
hello.
delegation.
Sorry, I had some technical problems to connect, but I was disconnected actually. No problem. Honorable Zulfikar Mustafa, Minister of Agriculture of Guyana, distinguished panelists for today's discussions, consultants, business people from the European Union, as well as from CARIFORUM countries, other participants here today, welcome to all. Today, we will be looking at one of the most important sectors in the Caribbean. Agriculture, including fisheries and food processing, plays a significant role in the region, contributing to food security, economic development, poverty reduction, employment, and overall sustainability. Food security in particular is currently among the highest priorities for the region. This is evidenced by the joint commitment of the CARICOM heads of government of reducing the Caribbean's food import bill by 25% by 2025. We applaud the region's ambition. At the same time, we remain fully cognizant that food security is also a matter of global concern. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia added to the difficult situation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and has highlighted the interconnectedness of our global food systems. Food security is therefore a shared responsibility that requires an intentional response from all countries and stakeholders. Accordingly, the EU has defined a global response to support the most vulnerable and the most affected countries in addressing the consequences of the crisis, including in the Caribbean. Actually, as part of this effort, the EU will be mobilizing significant cooperation resources to contribute to food security program for the Caribbean that supports smallholder farmers' production, access to credit, agri-tech, agri-food value chains, SPS, nutrition, social protection, etc. We are formulating that program right now. But historically, agriculture also forms a huge part of the cultural fabric of the Caribbean. Traditional farming practices such as crop cultivation, livestock rearing, and fishing are an integral part of the region's cultural identity. Preserving and promoting these practices also contribute to the preservation of the Caribbean culture and heritage. Through our continued engagement with the Caribbean and international partners, we are promoting the EU presence and investments in the region to collectively build a modern, sustainable, and climate-resilient agri-food sector that contributes to the economic growth, food security, and reduction of poverty in the Caribbean. In this context, let me mention the EU Select Summit that brought together in Brussels the heads of state and heads of government from the EU and Latin American and Caribbean this same week. As a result of this summit, there is a joint declaration by the leaders that states that by working together as sovereign partners, we are stronger and better placed to face the multiple crises and challenges of our times, including food insecurity, poverty, and inequalities in both regions. The CARIFORUM and the CARIFORUM EU Economic Partnership Agreement, EPA, is a key instrument to achieve these goals. While many agricultural products have been either excluded from liberalization or subject to long transition periods by CARIFORUM countries under the EPA, the agreement remains instrumental in boosting the much needed investments, two-way trade, and achieve sectoral development in the agri-food sector. EU investments can be notably facilitated by level playing field rules on establishing a commercial presence in the Caribbean, easier and less costly imports of video equipment and machinery, or by open access to European efficiency enhancing services related to agriculture, food processing, and fisheries. Therefore, for whatever goods produced in the region, the EPA would also provide for duty-free access on the EU market. It is important to mention that free trade does not mean trade threat. For example, the EU has committed under the EPA to undertake prior consultations on trade policy developments that may impact on the competitive positions of traditional Caribbean agricultural products, including bananas, rum, rice, and sugar. The agreement also takes into consideration the issue of food security and allows CARIFORUM countries to take appropriate measures in case of need. In recognition of the vital role that agriculture plays in the CARIFORUM member states, the chapter on agriculture and fisheries in the EPA also covers cooperation and assistance to the CARIFORUM agri-food sector. Cooperation priorities identified include areas such as market development, innovation, linkage development, financing, international health standard for fish and fish products, and investment promotion support. In practical terms, the European Union's new partnership with the Caribbean includes significant support to modernize the sector, to promote intra-regional trade of food products, and to develop more resilient agri-food systems, including fishery, in line with the farm-to-fork strategy of the European Green Deal. This approach will also contribute to an increased trade potential with the EU of agricultural and fishery products from the Caribbean. EU programs available to the region also include the provision of expertise exchanges that bring together professionals from EU and the Caribbean to work together towards achieving our common objectives around key areas such as renewable energy, water management, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, or investment promotion. These are crucial drivers to boost business opportunities in the region. As we will see during this event, the agricultural and fishery sector in the Caribbean offers great opportunities for EU investment. Potential areas include agribusiness and value-added processes, organic farming and sustainable practices, new agri-technologies and innovation, export-oriented agriculture, fisheries and agriculture, and agricultural infrastructure and logistics. Today, as we take an in-depth look at the unlocked potential that these opportunities hold, we should also note that investing in agriculture requires an understanding of local conditions, market dynamics, and regulatory framework. Through this webinar, our hope is that you will be provided with the knowledge for market research, partnering with local stakeholders, and creating value chains. The desired result is to be able to mitigate the risk, to navigate successfully the investment opportunities in the Caribbean agricultural sector, and ultimately to contribute to realizing the regional goal of reducing its food import bill by 2025. I wish you a successful event today and encourage you to participate in the future webinars in the series. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mogollon. Thank you for those remarks. Thank you also for bringing up that food security is a matter of global concern. The Belgian response, the Brazilian response, you brought up value addition, access to credit, agri-tech, all the things, topics that we will mention later or deep dive, delve into later. Thank you very much. Thank you. And right now we're going to take a picture. So may I now please invite all participants who'd like to be on the picture to switch on your cameras for a photo. And remember to smile. We are in the Caribbean. Smile. Allison, have you taken the picture?
I'm taking. Can we get some more smiles, please? Oh dear. Can we go again?
Cameras off.
Yes, I am. I'm taking your beautiful pictures. Okay. One more. One more set of smiles. Please keep smiles going. Chats keep coming up. 1 second. Okay, one last one. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you, everyone. You will now be seeing a poll on your screen. Is there a poll already? Smita here, yeah, here you go. Are you familiar with the provisions of the CARIFORUM EU IPA that relate to agriculture, fisheries, and food processing? Single choice answer. And we will provide the answers. While we do that, I will continue in the interest of time to introduce the session number 1. Here we go. Wow, 63% are not familiar and 37% are familiar with the provisions of the CARIFORUM IPA. So there is a lot of work to be done. We hope to do some of it today. So the first session, we will now proceed with officially session number 1. It aims to provide you with an overview of the main business opportunities that have been identified during the study. This session also includes a presentation, very important, on the key provisions of the CARIFORUM IPA agreement, relevant to agriculture, fisheries, and food processing. For this and the other studies in the series, the team, our team of consultants, has made generous use of the input of the Euro Chamber in Trinidad and Tobago and in the DR, which are the voices of European businesses in CARIFORUM. For that reason, we start the session with introductions by these Euro Chambers. First up is Ms. Marie-Louise Norton-Murray, Executive Director of the European Chamber in Trinidad and Tobago. She will speak to the role of the European Business Chamber in Trinidad and Tobago in supporting EU business partnerships for trade and investment. Over to you, Marie-Louise.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen and hear me okay? Okay, so firstly, Honorable Minister Zulfikar Mustafa, the representatives of the European Union, other invited guests. Good morning to everyone. The first thing I'd like to do is to thank the EU for this study and this series of webinars focused on promoting while identifying as well as promoting investment opportunities under the CARIFORUM EU Economic Partnership Agreement. And thank you to the team for including us and inviting us to say a few words. Now, our role here today is principally as a to introduce the chambers as facilitators for European market access, but I only have 5 minutes and I would like to also talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that I see for increased partnership between EU and CARIFORUM operators. So firstly, the European Business Chamber, we are a registered non-profit company, an NGO, operating in Trinidad and Tobago since 2013. We are a member of the Brussels-based European Business Organization Worldwide Network, which represents the voice for European businesses in third markets. So we represent the voice for European business and partnerships across multiple sectors in Trinidad and Tobago, including agriculture, tourism, and the culinary sectors, where we have several members. We are a contact point for European interests wishing to explore opportunities for trade, investment, and partnerships in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as a support network for local companies looking for European partners and to access European markets. we partner and we work very closely with European institutions, including the EU delegation and the EU embassies, promoting business initiatives and information and opportunities. We also liaise in the interest of our members with several government agencies in Trinidad and Tobago. So, our experience in agriculture has been from the very start of our operations, in that we have a sector and we support those members with services such as advocacy for improved regulatory matters, with networking opportunities, with lectures and tours, etc. And more formally, we have an MOU with COLIAD, which is one of the EU-based associations of producers, importers, distributors that promotes sustainable agriculture and market access. And more formally, we have been involved with partners in major EU-funded projects promoting sustainable agriculture, such as the Tobago Good Foods Project, as well as the current project in which we're involved, which is the Government of Trinidad and Tobago project funded by the EU, the IDB, CARIFORUM, which is promoting innovation. And through these projects, we have worked quite a bit with the agricultural sector, and we have seen their needs and potential opportunities for investment. So it's based on that experience. We'd just like to mention a few of the areas where we feel businesses can benefit from partnership. So the first, which has already been mentioned, relates to agri-tech, but more specifically to control agriculture, control environment agriculture. We have seen a significant interest and an increase in the number of investors in this area. And it makes sense because firstly, Trinidad and Tobago is a very small country in terms of its land holdings, but secondly, also because of climate change, there is probably a growing demand for this type of agriculture. And of course, the investors are utilizing all the various systems. However, what we've seen is that much of the work that's been done is by trial and error, and the traditional support institutions are not up to date and able to fully support persons investing in controlled environment agriculture. And so we see that there's a need for very experienced CA systems expertise. And this is perhaps one of the areas where there could be partnership. Another area is and it's sort of an immediate area, is to support and expand cocoa production. Trinidad and Tobago has a reputation for being one of the few countries that exports 100% fine flavor cocoa. The name of the fine flavor variety, which is Trinitario, actually originated from Trinidad and Tobago. So we have traditional research centers, gene bank, etc., the soil, etc., for growing cocoa. Most of the conditions, however, due to a number of issues, starting with the oil and gas sector and the loss of the labor force to the oil and gas sector and to other sectors. And now that that is less of an issue, we now have a new issue, which is the climate change and the impact of climate change on everything from moisture, humidity, etc., on the cocoa, loss of flowers, productivity, etc., of cocoa trees. So there is and at the same time, while this is happening, over the last few years, there's been an increase in the demand for cocoa from value-added producers. So why we now have an increased demand, we have a drastic fall in the supply of cocoa beans, and therefore there is an urgent need to look at investment and in cocoa production. Okay, and I think this can only be done with private sector, with international investors. I don't think this is something that we can do on our own. So the big opportunity exists. There are many farmers, and there's something like 50,000 hectares of cocoa lands to be rehabilitated and to make productive once again. Another area in Tobago, for example, Tobago is a very small island. It was named the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. And traditionally, Tobago was based on several very large estates. And to date, the tourism sector is, many of the hotels are surrounded by very large landholdings. And Tobago also needs to increase the quality of its, they need to increase quality rooms, something like a shortfall of 2,500 rooms. And so, but we believe the type of tourism has to be combined with agriculture, more agro-tourism, more, or even the hotel sector can actually work in agriculture through herbal gardens, through fruit trees, etc. Okay, and finally, the last area that I'd like to mention, we do have draft legislation in Parliament at the moment that will promote, and once passed, it will promote sustainable fisheries. It will address the international agreements on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, as well as quality management. And once this legislation is passed, there will be, it will open up new opportunities for investment in modernized infrastructure and facilities. And so with that, I just would like to say that the European Business Chamber is here to facilitate investors with information, contacts, organizations, B2Bs, helping investors navigate through regulatory requirements, and in general, advocating for improved business enabling environment. And we could be contacted very easily through email, Facebook, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie-Louise. Thank you for your comments and for bringing up the issue of land scarcity of land in the region, climate change, and the combination of agriculture and tourism. Thank you very much. I would immediately, like we're running a little bit late, I will pass the floor now to Mr. Gianmarco Pau Fernandez. Just yesterday, he was sworn in as the president of the Euro Chamber of Commerce of the Dominican Republic. Congratulations, felicitaciones, Gianmarco. He will address the business context in the Dominican Republic. Gianmarco, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Tamira. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you very much. As Tamira very well said, I am the president of the Euro Chamber of Commerce of the Dominican Republic. And I thank all of you. I thank the minister, all of you in your team, Noel, Smita, for, I think, this great initiative, and of course, the European Union for hosting this very important study on a crucial topic in the area as agriculture, fisheries, and food processing, particularly in this new era we're facing right now. My presentation is basically going to go over the business context in the Dominican Republic, of the opportunities that I think maybe we can take advantage of, and particularly the growth in the DR. That could be a very strong magnet for companies that wish to export and import to the Dominican Republic and from the Dominican Republic. So let's move forward. What is the Euro Chamber DR? The Euro Chamber DR is basically a confederation of chambers of commerce created in 1992, which unifies or unites European binational chambers of commerce in the Dominican Republic. We unify 7 chambers of commerce: the Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, Belgium, Dutch, and basically together we represent over 800 Dominican and European companies. We are among the largest associations in the country. We have a very wide-reaching network. We represent a very diverse group of companies and a very diverse group of chambers. So our direct members are, as I said, the German Chamber of Commerce, the Belgian Chamber of Commerce, which I also lead, the Spanish Chamber of Commerce, the French Chamber of Commerce, the Italian Chamber of Commerce, and the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce, and the Dutch Chamber of Commerce. Just last week became a member. So we are expanding our network, which is very, very nice. And as I said, we have over 800 corporate members, which is also very, very nice. So what is the Euro Chamber? We're the main business association that represents the interests between the Dominican Republic and the European Union, with more than 30 years of professional experience in the market. We are considered one of the top European chambers of commerce with the greatest specializations in law, business logistics, operations, and corporate relations in the Central American Caribbean region. And we have a wide international network as members of EDO that allows us to act as commercial promoters and to facilitate the interests of our membership with decision makers and natural authorities. Let's continue forward. The Dominican Republic. Well, you've all heard about the Dominican miracle. The Dominican Republic is the largest economy in the Caribbean and the Central American region. It has had a per capita growth of about 5% per year. This year, we are estimating that it's going to be about a 3 or 4%. You know, in the beginning of the year, we thought we were going to get a 5% growth, but it is still one of the fastest growing economies in the region. It has a population of 11 million people. Mostly young, which is very, very important. Our population, something like 49%, is under 25 years old. So we have a massive resource of young people that truly represent a dynamic economy. Our GDP in 2022 was $113 billion. That's very, very nice, because in 2021 we actually broke through the $100 billion range, and that does position us as the 6th largest economy in Latin America. And as I said, our GDP growth last year was 4.9%. This year it's probably going to be something like 4.2 or 4.3%. So that does position us as one of the fastest growing economies in Latin America, and as the largest economy in the Caribbean and Central America. Let's continue. The EU-Dominican Republic commercial relation. Fundamentally speaking, our commercial relationship with the European Union is very solid. We have had diplomatic relationships for over 30 years, established in 1992. We have an incredibly strong bilateral relationship. Actually, we had a Foreign Minister Borrell here last March, who commented upon the strong growth and the partnership that the Dominican Republic and the EU have. The Dominican Republic and the EU are strategic partners. We are also the largest trading partner of the EU in the Caribbean, and 70% of foreign investment that comes from the EU into the Caribbean comes into the Dominican Republic, so we're their largest investment partner too. Just so you know, last year, 2022, bilateral trade between the EU and the Dominican Republic grew by 20%, reaching a new record of 4,137 million euros, which is an important amount. And particularly, it is important that you note upon the contribution of the EPA agreement, that upon that time frame, since the signing of the EPA agreement, the trade between the EU and the Dominican Republic has tripled. And that is particularly because of the facilities given in the EPA agreement. And that is why this sort of webinars are so important, and why we must continually focus on this type of agreements. Fundamentally, it's also important that we know that some of the products that have basically contributed to that strong growth in trade have been Dominican exports like bananas, avocados, walnuts, tobacco, cocoa, and among other agricultural products. I'm going to focus later on what products are in niche right now or are in vogue, but it's very important that you sort of get an overall perspective on the opportunities, particularly among those products that are the most common and where the opportunities truly lie. So what is the Dominican Republic, the Dominican European trade like? Well, as you can see, we have a very strong trade balance, particularly right now. The Netherlands is a first European destination of Dominican goods. We have a very dynamic field. For example, Italy is our 2nd largest destination of Dominican goods, Germany 3rd, Belgium 4th, Spain 5th. Fundamentally speaking, there has continued to be, as you can see, among all actors, a continued growth in trade between the Dominican Republic and Europe, which is incredibly important and very nice, particularly in this post-COVID era. And On the other side, Spain is the first goods provider to the Dominican Republic in the EPA zone. Second is Germany. The Germans are very strong in the renewable energy sector, so they are continuing to rise. France is third, and Italy is fourth. So that just shows you the particular strength. And as you can see, trade continues to just have a very consistent improving tendency. As you can see, for example, the absolute number from 2021 to 2022 more than doubled. So fundamentally speaking, there has been a very interesting and a very strong tendency towards the positive. So fundamentally speaking, when it comes to agriculture, in the most recent study undertaken with the Ministry of Agriculture for a 3-year period, the tendency is very clear that there has been an overall improvement when it comes to the agricultural sector in the Dominican Republic. When it comes to monetary terms, the agriculture sector represented 5.7% of the GDP in 2021. The ministry does this very interesting 3-year studies. We are supposed to get the next one in 2024. And there we will see how the sector is performing. But right now, I can tell you from my experience, the sector is very, very strong, particularly because of all the facilitations given to the current administration. Let's move on. When it comes to the key factor, the EPA agreement. The EPA agreement has been a game changer. I don't think we can minimize, or we can at all talk about why we've had this basic transformation in EU trade relationship without talking about the EPA agreement. Fundamentally speaking, the EPA agreement has had 3 particular aspects that have transformed our relationship. Tariff reductions. I mean, the tariff reductions provisions are probably the most important ones. They have basically meant the elimination or the reduction of all the tariffs when it comes to agricultural products. There are a few left, which are come to, I think, 2025 or 2026. After that, you will only have tariff limitations on products such as weapons, for example. But overall, we will have a very open market, a very strong market, where basically companies will be able to export and import. Regulatory cooperation. The EPA includes provisions for regulatory cooperation between the EU and the Dominican Republic, which can help reduce blocks and improve our market access. I know many of you are very, very interested about that part because of the new regulations, the new tobacco regulations, new due diligence regulations, and the new deforestation regulations. But fundamentally speaking, there is a strong regulatory cooperation, and in my experience, there is a frank regulatory cooperation, which means the Dominican authorities do tend to hold up the banner of, this is what our market needs, this regulations we can accept, this we cannot. Intellectual property protection. The EPA includes provisions for intellectual property rights, including trademark, patents, copyrights, etc., which are incredibly important. Tips to do business in the Dominican Republic, just to finish up: work with local partners such as a local partner or a freight forwarder can help ensure your products are delivered efficiently. That is incredibly important. That is incredibly a crucial aspect in the Dominican Republic. Identifying local partners that you can work with. I've had the opportunity to work with several companies in the agricultural sector. For example, Fresh Fruit, which is a Belgian company that exports mangoes and other products from Moca, I think La Vega. From La Vega, they have had this tremendous success, particularly because they formed a wide range of local alliances, and they have had a lot of success unifying those local alliances with the provisions granted upon the EPA agreement. They sort of been able to solidify their presence in the Dominican market here. I would also recommend that you find products that right now are in vogue in Europe. Particularly many companies, European companies that come to the Dominican Republic have had great success because they have identified those niche agricultural products that are incredibly in vogue. For example, avocados. I mean, I don't have to tell you that avocados are incredibly in vogue right now. They are very, very labor consuming, and they are very, very difficult when it comes to their impact on the soil. But a lot of corporations, a lot of companies have had great success basically basing their operations, cultivating here avocados and exporting them to the US and into Europe. Another product is mangoes. Mangoes are right now the most interesting product, I would say, when it comes to exports. They've had incredible growth and incredible success. So my recommendation would be identify those very niche local products that that you think might be successful in the European market or the market you're exporting, and exploit those. Particularly speaking, research the market. That just overall goes to the sense of research the market, understand the market, try to identify the opportunities, try to identify what products particularly you think would be successful in the markets where you want to export. If you want to, for example, cultivate in the Dominican Republic to export to the EU or vice versa, try to identify which products would be best suited, which products, the regulations upon those products. We have many institutes here, for example, the Institute of Grape, which have an overall impact and understanding for regulations. Understand particularly how you can import and export, understand the national what the national regulations vis-a-vis the quality standards, the labeling, the documentation, et cetera, and form relationships with key stakeholders. That's another one of my recommendations. So overall, this is a brief tips on what I think you can do to basically maximize your opportunity in the Dominican market. And thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to stay for the questions round because I have 2 back-to-back events, which I probably should be leaving upon now. But there's my email. If you need anything, we are at your disposal, or you can contact us through Tamira, who I know will probably answer your question. And if not, she'll let us know your question, and we'll be happy to help all of you. And from the Euro Chamber of the Dominican Republic, we're at your service. And Tamira, congratulations for your initiative.
Thank you. Thank you, Gianmarco. Thank you very much. The tripling of trade between the DR and the EU because of the IPA is truly remarkable and commendable. There's lots of avenues to exchange strategies with the rest of the region. Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving right along, if you have questions for Marie-Louise or Gianmarco, please remember to place them in the chat. As Gianmarco says, he's leaving, but we will address them. Now, to lead into the rest of our impressive roster of speakers who will share their on-the-ground stories, who will continue to share their on-the-ground stories, I will continue now to outline the key business opportunities in agriculture, fisheries, and agro-processing that our team has found during our interviews with stakeholders and through desk research. I must say previous speakers have alluded to them all, but I will still go ahead. Let me find my okay, so we've identified 6 key business opportunities in the sector with a focus on the IPA. The first one is to sell consumer end products to the CARIFORUM countries, consumer end products. Why? CARIFORUM now imports about 15.5 billion euros in food products annually. The EU share of imports is 7.5%. So there's a lot of room for growth. It is true also that over the past 5 years, the EU sales to CARIFORUM has increased by 70%, and that is greatly due to what Gianmarco just alluded to. There is opportunities in high value added products from the EU, typical European products, and also because of the high tourism dependence of the region. Second group of opportunities is to invest for local consumption. There are 30 million people living in the CARIFORUM. That includes Haiti. Haiti has not signed the EPA agreement, but there are 30 million people, including Haiti. Tourists spend 120 million nights in CARIFORUM. As I already said, the import is 15.5 billion annually. And it's interesting to note that the DR produces about 80% of its food for local consumption, whereas the CARICOM produces less than 80%, reason for which there is the initiative that the minister alluded to earlier. There is opportunity, especially in the countries with large land masses, the DR, Guyana, and Suriname. We know that Barbados is already investing in Guyana to produce food. One of the next speakers will also speak to this. The next opportunity is to invest in CARIFORUM for export, invest to produce for export. And Jean-Marc alluded to the niche products. You can see a list here. I want to highlight for now shrimp, which is being produced in Belize and also in Guyana, tilapia, also in the Dominican Republic, sargassum. We will have someone speak to sargassum later, the speaker from Oceans by Origins. Then there is the agro-processing, and we also have Business Europe speaking, Vego Gold, which is a liqueur, and a registered farmer from Dominica. Someone also mentioned EU investors can provide linkages to international markets, which the region is much in need of. The fourth opportunity is to sell and invest in traditional inputs, equipment, and know-how. The minister mentioned knowledge sharing. So this is B2B. This is B2B. Irrigation has been mentioned, transportation between the countries and to Europe. You can read the list of know-how, knowledge sharing that is needed. From interviews, we know that the EU quality is superior to many others. The EU standards are similar to those in CARIFORUM, which makes it easy to sell to CARIFORUM people in the sector. And B2B business is less sensitive to price, perishability, and connectivity. So that presents an important opportunity. So sell and invest traditional inputs. The fifth opportunity is to sell and invest agri-tech to increase efficiency and quality. I think someone also mentioned that just now. You can see the list here of things that have been mentioned by interviewers in the region that are needed. There's a lot of room for efficiency improvements, a lot. CAIPA, the Caribbean Association of Investment Promotion Agencies, made a list last year about 73 concrete opportunities. You can find them on this link, investincaribbean.org. We have speakers coming up, an agri-tech expert, someone from Hubu Aqua Farm that does shrimp in an agri-tech way, and Origin by Ocean sargassum, which I just mentioned. The sixth opportunities is based on the EPA, again, lower tariffs than are afforded to EU companies than are afforded to most favored nations, no local partners needed, and national treatment for EU nationals. My colleague, Dr. Lucia Angelo, will elaborate on that. And I want to close by showing you this slide that shows how large is the room for growth through investment, through sales, etc. The graph shows the agricultural land in square kilometers. You see the Dominican Republic ranks high. I put Netherlands there because Netherlands is a big EU exporter, and then Guyana, Suriname, Jamaica, and the rest. What is interesting is this. The population of CARIFORUM is 20 million. The agri-exports in euros is about 5.3 billion euros. Netherlands has a population of 17 million and agri-exports about 65 billion. So really there is a lot of room for investments to help us go forward. So thank you very much. I will pass the floor now to my colleague, Dr. Lucia Angelo. And Lucia, you can start sharing your screen.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. So yes, let me share my screen. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Lucia. We were having trouble hearing Tamira at the end of her presentation.
Thank you, Noel. Well, so let me just go through this presentation of provisions of the EPA, starting very briefly by saying to those who don't know about the agreement that it is not just about trading goods nor trade in services only. It's about investments activity, the establishment of commercial presence, also governing access to public procurement, funding, cooperation. Mr. Morion mentioned a few relevant areas of cooperation earlier, and also it actually defines the key objectives of the agreement, which are in line basically with the Sustainable Development Goals. So this framework agreement, because it is such a comprehensive agreement, which has been negotiated by each of the 15 CARIFORUM countries and the EU member states, it has many moving parts and moving pieces, if you will. It has to be, because it is a framework agreement, it has to be enforced through national legal structures, legal framework in each signing or in each country, really. So my purpose here is really to give you a few pointers so that you can go through our report, go through the agreements, if you will, or have, say, the right questions for your business support organization. I really do recommend that you get in touch with the Euro chambers in the region. As Marie-Louise and John Marco mentioned before, they are really versed into all the regulatory, the legal aspects of the EPA, and especially they are aware, they are up to date as far as the implementation in each country is concerned. So, like I said, I'm just going to give you a few pointers, starting by saying that there are some provisions applying across all sectors of activity. For instance, things that you will find all across, say, the agreement in order again, it's not just so basically it governs or gives the rules towards fighting anti-competitive activities. It also requires transparency, and among the trade facilitating aspects, the tariff liberalization that Jean-Marc Paul mentioned earlier. So aside those, say, general provisions, you will find some sector-specific provisions, and usually those you can find in the annexes, especially as it relates to market access in the subsectors of interest to you. So generally speaking, commitments made by each signing party, each country, are laid out in those annexes. So I'll come back to this a bit later. Regarding the key provisions, again, as I mentioned before, you have provisions applying across all sectors, such as, for instance, trade facilitation. Then you will find that each party is obliged to, for instance, name technical barriers to trade contact points or SPS competent authorities. Even though each of those countries, each EU member state, each CARIFORUM country is also party to the World Trade Organization agreement on SPS or TBT, SPS for sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Actually, a specific chapters towards those to make sure that it is actually being implemented in each signing country. Then another important provision as well regards rules of origin. Basically, in order to benefit from the agreement, you need to prove that your commodity is originated from, say, the right country. You cannot just re-export and pretend, you know, to benefit from the agreement. I mean, I'm really being simplistic here, but you will find a whole protocol on rules of origin in the EPA. Then regarding investment activities, regarding the establishment of commercial presence, aside from services, that is, aside from activities that pertain solely to services, you can find commitments made under Annex 4E of the agreement, aside from the horizontal provisions or general provisions regarding market access and national treatment that you will find in the main body of the agreement. Then you have a specific set of commitments regarding services you can find under Annex 4F of the agreement. And then, well, I mentioned competition earlier, public procurement very quickly. Just also mention that there is a specific chapter, or there's a chapter dedicated to agriculture and fisheries, but mainly to really state that agriculture, food, fisheries are sensitive sectors, and that because of this sensitive nature, the CARIFORUM member states are allowed to implement some measures in order to make sure that any activity in these sectors does not affect the sustainability goals, basically. Also, I'm sorry, I'm going very quickly through this presentation because, you know, we're running out of time, but I'm not dwelling into tariff liberalization because Gianmarco mentioned it.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Can you put your show in slide mode, in slideshow mode, because you have it in regular mode? Can you put your presentation in the slideshow mode with that?
Yes.
Thank
You're
you.
having trouble seeing it, maybe.
Some people are, yes.
Yes, sorry about that. So very briefly, through tariff liberalization in CARIFORUM, there are some agricultural commodities that can, you know, from significant reduction, tariff reduction under the EPA. MFN, as you know, is most favored nation. So these are the tariffs applied under the most favored nation regime. So these are a few examples of the difference you can find between the general tariff and the tariff under the EPA for some food products, some machinery or equipment. Again, you can find lists or further. As far as market access and national treatment is concerned, the general idea is that EU firms and investors are allowed access to CARIFORUM states. Right. So the general idea is that they can just go and set up a commerce there or invest there. Now, each country has also defined some limitations, some reservations, sorry, that you can find under Annex 4E and 4F of the agreement. 4F, if you are interested in services. Why is there a different annex for services? It's because you need to look at the different modes of service. And also you need to pay attention to one particular mode, which is mode 4. Generally speaking, persons is obviously governed by immigration laws in each country. This is just to give you an example of how you can find or how you can read the commitments made under Annex 4F dedicated to services. say, for instance, services incidental to agriculture or fishing or food manufacturing. Basically, usually, as far as cross-border supply of service is concerned and consumption of service abroad is concerned, most CARIFORUM countries pose no limitation, no reservation, aside from, as I mentioned before, mode 4, the presence of natural person. Fishing is a bit more prone to reservations and limitations. As far as investments and commercial presence is concerned, again, under the dedicated annex, you will find reservations and limitations that have been identified, that have been, agreed upon by the different countries. Generally speaking, if you do not find your subsector of activity, it means that you have market access and national treatment. So I'm going also very okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to end on this last slide just to show you a few examples of activities or subsectors of activity and services that some CARIFORUM countries basically have posed no limitation or committed to pose no reservation or limitation for access from the EU. So aside from the traditional activities in agriculture, fisheries, or food processing, we also listed some services that are related to those sectors of activity. Again, you can find further details in the report. Also, I would strongly suggest that you use some online tools that are very, very helpful. If you want to know about the tariffs that is being applied currently, you do not have to go through the whole tariff liberalization schedule. You can just access the EC database, access to market database, and I also suggest that you consult the INTRASEN publication on services and investment commitments under the EPA, and also get in touch with the business support organizations like the Euro Chambers that have spoken before. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucia. Thank you very much for that. We will be moving right along, but I also understood that my last slide was not, or my last comments were not understandable. I don't know why that always happens. So let me just show that. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can.
Just one moment. So this was the last slide. It said, what is the room for growth? It showed the agricultural land in the Dominican Republic, the Netherlands, and the rest of the countries. And then the conclusion or statement was that CARIFORUM has a population of 20 million, and the agri-exports in euros is 5.3 billion. Whereas the Netherlands has a population of 17 million and their agri-exports are 65 billion. That shows that there is a lot of room for growth if we invest in CARIFORUM to produce. Exactly. Thank you. I'll leave it at that. We were looking at the chat. I think all the questions have been answered. If so, we will move to the next slide, to the next session. Thank you. I must say, there is a brochure that we made about this agricultural sector that is based on the study that was done And my colleague will now drop it in the chat. You could go there, drop the link in the chat. You can go there and see the findings of our study. Moving to the next session, session 2. In this session, 5 speakers will share challenges as experienced by the private sector. Each will have 10 minutes to do so. The first speaker is Mr. Roemer Simons, the advisor on EU trade policy at Business Europe. The floor is yours, Mr. Simons.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. I hope you can all hear me well. I do not have a presentation prepared, so I'm afraid you'll have to be looking at my face for a couple of minutes. Thank you very much for the invitation. First of all, about Business Europe. We represent the national industry and employers federations from about 35 European countries. This includes EU and non-EU members. And our main mission as organization is to ensure that on behalf of our members, the voice of business is heard in EU policymaking. So this means that we take great interest in EU policies that shape opportunities for European businesses abroad. So it is some kind of indirect trade promotion, if you will. And therefore, we highly appreciate the study that has been conducted by International Economics and others. It gives European businesses great insights in terms of opportunities and challenges when investing in trading with the CARIFORUM states. And we definitely support raising awareness about these opportunities. So in this short address, I will briefly talk about how the current European policies have impacted the investment and trading relationship between the EU and the CARIFORUM states, before arguing that beyond these lessons from the study, the CARIFORUM states have the opportunity to attract investments by observing what's happening in Europe. And European businesses face a paradigm shift towards a green and sustainable economy. And I think playing into these regulations would position the CARIFORUM states as a unique place for business and foreign direct investment. So currently, what's happening right now? As has been mentioned by previous speakers, the CARIFORUM EPA has obviously provided European businesses with new opportunities and the legal framework to grow their trading and investment relationship with the Caribbean, which we just heard about. Some trading relations with the EU have grown steadily and more evenly. We see that the Dominican Republic has grown, for example, the trading relationship has grown almost 300% since signing the EPA, with its main exports being mineral oils, mechanical devices, jewelry, and powdered milk. On the other hand, trading relationships with other members of the CARICOM have stagnated over the same period, except for some significant spikes in oil and fuel exports. So we believe there's a lot of room still for improvement, and we need to have a new effort to spur this economic growth. So overall, what we see indeed, as confirmed by the report, the Caribbean imports most of its foods, especially classic European agricultural products such as cheese and wine. And growing this trading relationship and making it more balanced requires perhaps European direct investments and importing agricultural technology and know-how. But before, I'd like to mention on how to spur economic growth, I would like to mention that there are still several trade barriers. On the CARIFORUM side, the Dominican Republic still applies discriminatory VAT duties for imported ham and cheese products and upholds very stringent conditions for foreign companies to terminate importation and distribution contacts with Dominican Republic companies. So European businesses have less flexibility doing business in the Dominican Republic, which makes it less attractive place to invest. And also Trinidad and Tobago implies excess duties on imported alcohol beyond the WTO tariffs. So we understand that reducing dependency on food imports is a government priority. But from a business perspective, importing food is also a way of growing the economy and trading relationship. As pointed out in a report, food imports are related to a growing tourism sector, which similarly brings foreign direct investments and a steady economic impulse to local communities. So the CARICOM states and the DR can also perhaps decide to play to their competitive advantage of the tourism sector. But let's work with the priority that growing the agricultural sector in CARIFORUM is what's needed. How can we stimulate European businesses to do so. I believe the report has done an excellent job in identifying the opportunities and challenges in attracting investments in the agricultural sector, in food processing and fisheries, and I will not attempt to repeat these exactly. However, coming from Business Europe, we also see another big regulatory challenge, which can be turned into an opportunity, which was not mentioned in the study, and that is, of course, the European Green Deal, which is this huge sustainability legislative package. It will significantly impact trade in agricultural, food products and fisheries. As part of its commitments to combat climate change and promote sustainability, the EU aims to transform its own agricultural sector and particularly its food system to become more environmentally friendly and resilient. And this transformation will impact domestic agricultural practice, but also its trading relationship with other countries. So internally, the EU will promote sustainable farming practices such as organic farming and precision farming, while encouraging the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, prohibition of certain pesticides, monoculture, biodiversity, and promote biodiversity. And in trade, the Green Deal will lead to increased scrutiny of agricultural imports, for example, coming from the CARIFORUM states. We've had the deforestation legislation, and there are plans coming to ban products made using forced labor. And this all heightens barriers of exporting agricultural products to the EU and impact the access to the European market. Such sustainability standards will also apply, by the way, to the financial sector and to capital markets. European banks, institutions, and fund managers will very soon favor investments in sustainable economic activities. These measures don't only apply to private institutions, but also likely to EU-sourced development finance. So European businesses wanting to attract capital to invest, for example, in a CARIFORUM state, will need to do so sustainably. There are new standards. So in addition to these agricultural regulations, more obstacles to trade, and less investments in non-green activities, European businesses even face more reporting standards, or they need to comply with new reporting standards on human rights obligations throughout their whole supply chain, which will also impact international trade tremendously. And kind of putting these all things together, this is the regulatory future for European businesses. It must be green and it must be responsible. And this is what the CARIFORUM state should prepare for. But there's also something here that the CARIFORUM states can leverage, and there's a competitive advantage here. And I think the report very duly notes that there's a new significant trend in the uptake of new farming methods in the CARIFORUM states, such as organic and natural fertilizers and regenerative agriculture methods. So acknowledges that the Dominican Republic is a major exporter of organic cocoa, and it can position itself as a sustainable alternative to, say, Africa's dominance in the cocoa sector. And this is not per se limited to the DR, but the study suggests that the Belgian government is looking to engage the CARIFORUM as a whole to invest in the cocoa sector. I think we'll hear more from the next speaker about this. So to make the CARIFORUM states really attractive for European businesses and European investments, it must anticipate this upcoming regulatory framework for European businesses and put the right measures in place. A good starting point would be to fully implement the Cotonou Agreement as required by the EPA, if it hasn't been done so already. I'm not aware of the latest state of implementation of this. So wrapping our heads around this, coming from Business Europe, what European businesses need, it's one thought. European businesses are facing a new reality of transitioning to the green economy, and the CARIFORUM states can leverage this and unlock the investments they need, because they have a lot of potential with their organic agriculture and already their good practices. They can unlock these investments if they help European businesses comply with these new rules and regulations that are coming from the EU side. So we are optimistic. We believe there is a lot of potential for investment for European businesses, and yeah, we are very thankful for the study that has been conducted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simons. Thank you for bringing up the European Green Deal. Thank you. And there was a question in the chat about monocultures, pesticides, and herbicides being promoted. Thank you also for bringing up the idea of sustainable practices by the EU law, etc., for green and responsible agriculture, that it is necessary to be able to export it to the EU or even to invest in any country because of your upcoming requirements that are going to be law. Thank you very much. And I hope that answers the question, a very valid question for the person who put it in the chat. Thank you. Next up is Mr. Sandyford Edwards. I believe Mr. Edwards is not able to join us. Is that correct?
I am here. I am here.
Oh, you are here. Okay, thank you. He is the senior technical expert of the CARICOM private sector organization. He will give an overview of the business of agriculture, fisheries, and food. We used a lot of your data in your study for our own study. So we are pleased that you are able to join us. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join. I bring greetings on behalf of the chairman, Mr. Gervais Warner, and the CEO and technical director of the CARICOM private sector organization, Dr. Patrick Antwine. And it's certainly a pleasure to be here with you. Recognizing the time constraints and noting that some of the information would have certainly been used before, the presentation would simply have three parts. First of all, just a quick background on the CARICOM private sector organization. And then I want to talk a little bit about the trade and investment opportunities that we see, skipping some of those that you would have mentioned prior. And then thirdly, to look at what we consider to be some of the doing business challenges, both within the region and transacting with Europe. So the CPSO, we are the CARICOM private sector organization, designated an associate institution of CARICOM. So it means that we have a seat at the heads of government to represent private sector's interest in the region and not just any specific sector. Our mandate initially is to focus on the contribution of the full implementation of the CARICOM single market and economy, and more recently, engagement with third country markets. So we're speaking of looking at Africa with engagement with the Africa Business Council, of course, with Europe through the Economic Partnership Agreement and the European Union. And we are collaborating with the European Union on IP on intellectual property and harmonization of company laws, etc. The CPSO, we represent a wide cross-section of the private sector, including small, micro, and medium-sized enterprises with a membership of over 4,000 firms. I said our purpose is towards supporting the heads with the full implementation of the CSME, and the private sector have given itself at least 5 years to see impact towards the full implementation of the regime. Our vision is that there can be free movement of capital, ideas, goods, services, technology, people across the space and engagement with third country markets. The work of the CPSO is aligned in 6 thematic areas, and that includes disaster risk reduction and recovery, which is the latest thematic area that is now being refashioned to include climate change, which is a cross-cutting issue and very important. Trade in goods and trade in services, which is the free movement of goods regime, the free movement of labor, expanding agri-food value chain opportunities, the enabling business environment, and then the last one, looking at finance and capital markets, deepening and integration. And this is extremely important for us. In terms of assessing the business opportunities within the region, what we've done, we've established the criteria, and the criteria that we follow basically highlights, does it contribute towards energy security? Does it contribute towards climate security? What about food and nutrition security? And that is the big one for us, food and nutrition security. As you're aware, the CPSO supported the heads of government working in collaboration with the Ministerial Task Force on food production and food security to develop the 25% by 2025 initiative, which basically seeks to ensure that the region can improve trade amongst itself and reduce extra-regional trade by 25% by 2025. But also in collaboration with the Ministerial Task Force member states and the CARICOM Secretariat through the Agricultural Unit, look at how do we strengthen regional value chains so that they can integrate into global value chains, particularly looking at the European market. It also speaks to the ability of the private sector to invest in particular area. Is there sufficient demand? And do we have the appropriate technology and technological know-how to be able to implement those investment opportunities? So what are the trade and investment opportunities that, from our vantage point, that is around agriculture that we believe is available? We have 19 agri-food opportunities allocated in 6 value chains, which I would look at shortly, around the 25 by 2025. And we believe that this is a good space, that this is fertile soil, fertile ground for investment in the region and trade between the European Union members and the CARIFORUM members. We believe that this space affords some opportunities. Nutraceuticals as well afford some opportunities, and the Trinidad colleague here mentioned cocoa. We've had other participants mention cocoa, and we believe that cocoa-based products across the region holds investment opportunities and trade opportunities, especially along the line of niche value-added single roast cocoa opportunities, as well as essential oils. We're looking at the pimento, the vetiver, you're looking at lemongrass, ginger, and nutmeg, that some of those nutraceuticals really holds tremendous investment opportunity and trade for the private sector within the region and with Europe. And then thirdly, as a complement, we believe that investment in industrial products that supports the development, especially of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises who are involved in what we call value-added operations, is important and holds opportunities. So for example, when we think of regenerative agricultural products, such as using the banana straws to produce different kind of products, using wood, using different regenerative opportunities, we believe to replace plastics can do very well for biodiversity, very well for the environment and its ecosystem, can do very well for the marine ecosystem, etc. That those are good opportunities, nascent opportunities that are available. Glass bottles, especially for small and micro and medium-sized enterprise who are unable to import container loads at a time, that investment in this space can really help to strengthen those value chains, but particularly getting down to the last mile, the producers who are at the last mile of the curve. So those are some trade and investment opportunities that we believe is important. Just to drill down a little bit in terms of what we have seen within the region on the landscape for investment, we're saying that fish products holds opportunities for investment in the region and for trade. And those fish products can be within fresh, can be canned, can be salted. We also have the investment opportunities in cereals and staples, in meat products, in edible vegetables, fruits and nuts, in milk and cream, and in beverages. And in most of the cases, the analytical work has already been done by the CARICOM private sector organization. And Tamira, you did say that you've utilized it and you recognize. I can assure you that our CEO and technical director and the executive committee would be extremely pleased to know that the installment that we've made in terms of advancing the region's agri-food system development is bearing fruits. So those are some opportunities that we can identify and highlight, both for investment in the region, intra-regional trade, and creating the critical mass to be able to tap into global value chains, especially with the European Union. As time winds down, it's going to be remiss of me if I don't identify at least some of the doing business challenges that we think is important, that needs to be addressed. Those are on the front burner of the CARICOM private sector organization, forming part of our work program that we are putting focused energy behind, but it also requires a joined up effort with other development partners, such as the European Union, joined up effort with the CARICOM Secretariat, with member states, with the full backing of the private sector to be able to advance them. The cost of doing business is important. Yeah, if we look at the region and we compare the cost of doing business in small island developing states as compared to some of the other jurisdictions. Private sector, it's all about time, it's all about speed, it's all about cost. They would find appropriate places to deploy capital. And if the region cost of doing business is creating an additional bottleneck, an additional binding constraint, then this may hinder the ability to fully exploit the opportunities within the region. There is a need for harmonization to be implemented quickly within the region around company laws, IP, the SPS regime, looking at our competition policy and our competition regime, and the architecture around how we administer competition, around mergers and acquisition. There is a need for non-tariff barriers and measures to be fully eliminated within the region. And again, a substantial amount of work went into this area in 2017. The BFM study, which is well known and is often used, the work has already been done. The non-tariff barriers and measures, they have already been identified. Recommendations have already been put forward as to what needs to be done to address this binding issue to enable trade within the region. And again, the CPSO stands ready to make that study available, and our technical resources or technical experts led by the CEO and technical director, Dr. Antoine, to advance improvement in this area. Trade will be affected if transport and logistics is not addressed, and specifically around less than container load cargo that affects our micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in a disproportionate way as compared to the large organizations that can move container loads. There needs to be investment, there needs to be work in how we can improve port efficiency, how we can address the operational capacity at ports, how we can deal with the port tariff arrangements around LCL. Those things influence trade within the region, but as well trade with the European Union. A payment settlement system, especially within the region, having regard to the fact of the multiple currencies that we trade with. It's important that we have a single currency or an architecture that allows for the ease of settlement of payments within the region. Lack of harmonization around duties and charges, and this is particularly important around the agricultural products and the need for a regional approach to the agricultural development space, and having an agricultural development policy that coincides with our duties and tax regime that really preserves food and nutrition security issues, but also creates the space and the room for regional enterprises to grow and develop and to be able to take advantage of the duty-free or the quota-free access we have with the European Union through the EPA. And then finally, the availability of market intelligence and data. Some decisions in boardroom requires data. The private sector is driven by data that is accurate, that is timely, that is relevant, and that they can use to drive critical investment decisions. Those are some of the binding constraints that needs to be addressed if we are going to move the needle faster and have what is called quantum leap in our regional trading infrastructure and trading amongst ourselves and integration into the European Union. On the transportation side of it, a quick example here, when we speak of the cost of doing business, you look at trading within the region and it's about 13% for CARICOM traders. The overall cost of doing business, the overall cost of the product, 13% is related to transportation. As compared to the developed markets, such as those in the European Union, it's only 5.7%. So it's twice time more expensive in the region as it relates to the final cost of a product as compared to the European Union for the movement of goods. And we think that this is a very important slide to getting there. And finally, before I get the signal that I only have 30 seconds left, there are two issues that are extremely important that requires focused attention to be able to advance. The first one has to do with the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, particularly Article 164, that benefits the OECS region or the least developed countries within the CARICOM space. And we're speaking of things like curry powder and flour, where the regime within the European Union, the EPA, that provides for liberalization contradicts what is agreed to under Article 164. Those are things that needs to be rectified to ensure that the region doesn't afford more favorable treatment to the European Union than amongst itself. That needs to be clarified. And then secondly, the issue of standards. How are the producers in the region, the manufacturers in the region, how are they going to get access to the European Union? Are we saying, is it important? We believe it is important, rather, that we need to address the standards, especially around private standards, for issues such as space, that has the potential to create a barrier for companies in the region to be able to access and penetrate the European market. We believe that those things are important. Two seminal points that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later, so that we can benefit from the fruits of the EPA, having regard to the fact that it has been in existence for a number of years, almost a decade. With those few remarks in the presentation, we want to thank you again for the opportunity to present. As I've said, the CEO and technical director, along with the executive committee, did provide and continues to provide the support for this initiative, and looks forward to future collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, for that. Was very, very interesting presentation. Thank you very much for bringing up the issue of value chain. It's not just the food chain and the value chain, but the industrial products also. Thank you very much, and thank you for your detailed work of the private sector organization. I'm not sure if your last slide showed your email address. So if it doesn't, please do so that people can get in touch with you. Thank you very much. The next speaker was supposed to be Mr. Odile Valmont, an agri-tech expert in Dominica, but he is now in a part of the country where connectivity is not very good. So he will not be able to attend. So we will skip his presentation and go to the question and answer session. I have a few announcements to make. Actually, it's a question, or even an opportunity suggestion. It says that more than 50% of the fish goes to waste. 50% of the fish goes to waste. There's some potential there to capitalize on the waste and in several ways, such as food for animals. I'm sorry, I just missed someone here. Sorry. Marie Granstam, I'm just being told that I missed someone. Not my intention, the lady, just 1 minute. So let's go then to the last speaker for this session. That is Ms. Marie Granstam, the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Executive Activist of Origin by Ocean. It is one of the top 10 EU startups unlocking the power of the oceans regeneratively. Ms. Granstam, the floor is yours, and pardon the omission just now.
No worries at all. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And of course, thank you for this opportunity to be here today to talk about our activities. I think maybe we are now a very good example of the transparent value chain, and also the fact that how the Green Deal of EU can be incorporated in the CARIFORUM area and the countries. So I'm the CEO and the founder of Origin by Ocean, and we are really here to work on the invasive seaweed problem and turn that into a valuable business. And as we all know, the sargassum is one of the biggest environmental problems of today when it comes to the overgrowth of the oceans and eutrophication. That's why we are very keen on give you an example how we work on this problem and how we actually incorporate sargassum from the Caribbean into our value chain. So we are basically tackling two problems of this world. The first one is the high dependency of oil we all have as the consumers. So when we are looking at the products we use every day in our household, many of them contain more than 80% of oil-based ingredients. And many of them are so-called liquid formulations, which means that when we use them in households and at homes, they end up in the oceans. So it's actually very important to realize this fact that we need more biodegradable and bio-based ingredients into the The second problem we are tackling is the eutrophication, as I mentioned earlier. So eutrophication means that we have excess of nutrients in our waterways and oceans, so phosphorus and nitrogen. And this is what happens is that when we have exceed a certain concentration of these nutrients in these waterways, we start to see these harmful and invasive algae blooms taking place. And this is exactly why we are facing this unfortunate sargassum problem in the Caribbean region, now hitting the US as well. But we also have the same problem in Europe. So in Portugal and Spain, we also have sargassum blooms and also some other invasive blooms. The problem is that we should take this ocean, because otherwise they will invade, of course, the living space from other marine organisms, and also they take a lot of oxygen away from the marine ecosystem. So I'm always telling people that we could all go out there and start harvesting sargassum, but the big question is what to do with that. This is our solution. So what we do is that we use sargassum as a feedstock in our biorefinery, and we turn that into an algae-based functional ingredients. Functionality is very, very important. So we don't do any additives, but we actually want to bring functionality into our consumer goods. And when we do that, and when we replace these oil-based ingredients in the several products, we can decarbonize the consumer goods as well. So the dependency of oil we have today can be reduced. So everyone is talking about sustainability, and I think that's the word that we have a bit maybe overused in the past. I would like to talk about regeneration to be one of the key areas that we as a company are focusing on. So we are really believing that the regeneration is the future, and it should be present, but of course we are now mastering the skills of the regeneration of the ecosystems where we function. So the regeneration means that we have to leave a net positive impact behind in the environment where we are functioning. So as you can see in this slide, there is this Obo biorefinery in the middle. So that's our technology of the biorefinery process, where we can then take these harmful invasive seaweed species and turn them into functional ingredients. So we are B2B, so we are selling the ingredients to other businesses. So when we take the biomass out from the ocean, we remove the nutrients with it. And that's something that needs to be measured. So you have to be able to show that what is your power in a nutrient removal. And this is what we do. And when we do that, of course, what happens is that we leave a positive impact behind in that marine ecosystem. And on the other hand, when our biorefinery is shooting out the products from the process, and when we substitute the oil-based ingredients, we decarbonize the markets and these particular consumer goods, and also the manufacturing processes where we can use our ingredients. So one golden rule of the biorefinery is to squeeze as much as value as you can out from a single feedstock. And that's why we have multiple products. So our process is capable of producing these 5 different functional products, which can, as you can see, go to all different markets of this world. So this is the beauty of the chemical industry value chain, is that we can use exactly the same selling channels to sell these ingredients to different markets, going from textiles to food, home and personal care, cosmetics, and packaging. We have 100% utilization rate of the sargassum we put in. So the biomass residue, which is left behind after processing these products you can see on the slide, is used as a cattle feed and also as a fish feed. So I think that's a very interesting link to different agro industries as well, where we can utilize the power of seaweed to bring more nutritional value also to different animals. I think you are well aware of this unfortunate problem in the Caribbean region, but what you can see here, that all of these black dots are the sargassum concentrations happening around the region. And this is something that's a satellite picture of the of the region, and every year we have around 25 million tons of sargassum blooming around there. I think we are underestimating the number today. I think it's even higher. So this year has been kind of the record of the sargassum blooms, and no one really knows the current volume what we are facing. So we are active in the Dominican Republic. We have started to build a supply chain of sargassum there. And here are some pictures of the very successful work that we have done together with the local partners. And I want to highlight here the fact that the earlier person was talking about how to bring the build the value chain in the region. I think one of the key things is that you have to have some understanding about the local infrastructure and also the local players, because they are the experts in that field, and they hold the know-how of the local infrastructures and community. So we really wanted to search for local companies that we can empower the local community to work on this sargassum problem, because they are the ones who are facing it every day. We are in Finland, which is very far away from the Caribbean. So it's important that the local people can work on the problem, and we want to stay behind the scenes. So we pay for these businesses to do the work for us along the value chain. So we are very proud to have SOS Carbon as our partner in the Dominican Republic. And also we have hired a local representative, Marcos Diaz. You can see him in the pictures, working on us and helping us to really build the supply chain there. So we've been shipping sargassum in containers to Finland. That has been a big exercise to start from small samples of 100 kilos. And now we are talking about 20 to 50 tons, which is coming every 3 months from the DR to Finland. So there is a lot you have to do on the logistics. And I think the previous speaker was highlighting the fact very nicely that the logistical chain from the DR to Europe, in this case to Finland, is very important to have it solid. So we are also using Nodo Logistics, which is the local logistic expert and a company to help us to really bring that to industrial scale. So it's easy to ship small scale, but industrial scale is very different. So what happens is that when sargassum hits the Finland, it goes to the biorefinery straight away. And this is the place where we then refine the products I showed you. And we are also looking at the different methods of storing the sargassum. We started a collaboration last week, actually, with Intech, which is the local private university in Santo Domingo in the DR, so that they will have the know-how to analyze the sargassum for us. So we will also bring the quality control know-how into the country, which I think is very important to educate the locals as well. So there will be more knowledge sharing, and they can benefit as a society for this about this information. Here you can see some of our products, just to show you that we have done a lot of work, of course, to bring the sargassum from the Caribbean into the final products and really understand the power of these components. So the roadmap we have had in the Caribbean has been a long one, in a way that we started the supply chain development in 2021. The UN was playing a big role here because we won the Global UN Innovation Challenge in 2020, and the UNOPS basically stepped in to help us to have first contacts to the region. The future looks bright, but it looks also that we need to have a lot more information about sargassum as such when it comes to harvesting it. So we need to understand different authorities who play a role here and who owns the sargassum when it enters the different, let's say, ocean regions of different countries. So no one really knows if the DR is able to harvest from the Puerto Rico's waters. So this is something that we all need to find out. We are building the industrial scale supply chain as we speak. The next big shipment will happen in August, and we are doing a lot of work on that. It's still not solid, but it still needs a lot development. And we are looking at investing into a biorefinery in the Dominican Republic in 28, 29. So we want to build this business in locally, because this is where the biomass is, and the biorefinery always needs to be there where the biomass is. And that's why, of course, the DR has been a very important partner for us to build this supply chain and basically source us with sargassum so that we can do the scaling up here in Europe. And we will build our first biorefinery here in Finland in 26, and the second biorefinery will be in the Dominican Republic, and it's investment around 150 million euros. We are launching the first products this year. So actually next week will come a first product out with one of the big brands in Europe. And this is a slow way that we can basically show the power of sargassum turn into a very useful products in European markets first. And of course, as we are a small company, we need some time to expand and ramp up, of course, the production as well, because this is a volume business, and this is where we want to head. But I'm not going to take more time. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about this value chain that we have built and are still building. And I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. That was very, very interesting. Thank you for introducing the concept of making chemical industry run on algae, for showing, I don't know if you showed that slide, but I saw it before, the potential size of this market, and for showing that the same supply chains can be used as for traditional the chemical industry. Very interesting. We have a question right off the bat, and that is, and you sort of alluded to it, how do you capture the sargassum before it reaches the beach and becomes contaminated, so you can derive the resource's full range of benefits? Do you use special process to monitor and capture at sea?
Yeah, so we are not the harvesting people, so to speak, but we are the ones who are then purchasing sargassum. So SOS Carbon in the DR, they are our harvesting partner, so we are buying sargassum from them. And they have, I don't know if you can call it technology, but let's call it a technology, but they have a harvesting method to harvest that from the ocean directly. So that's very important. As the sargassum problem has hit Punta Cana very hardly and heavily, so they have invested a lot of money for the barriers as well. So that, of course, is enabling us to get the sargassum from the ocean. So that's our target, is to get the sargassum from the ocean.
Very good, thank you. You see the poll on your screen. You can go ahead and answer the poll. Thank you very much. There is, I also wanted to ask you if you want to know more about the EPA CARIFORUM arrangements, you can email the EU delegation. I think the address is also in the chat. If my colleagues could again repeat it in the chat. We open the floor for more questions and answers. We have another question, actually one for Marie. Marie, can you put your contacts in the chat so people can contact you? That's one. And then we have another question generally about cocoa in the question and answer session. How can the EU assist in rehabilitating 50,000 hectares of fine cocoa? Is there someone that can answer that question?
Hi, on the cocoa. On the cocoa question, it was in my presentation, I raised that there's a need for rehabilitation of 50,000 hectares. And the expectation is definitely not that the EU provides any sort of grant funding to do that. This has to be done on a commercial basis. It has to be an investment opportunity. And the idea is really for interest by investors in partnering. So for example, if there are chocolatiers in Europe or any other part of the world that have an interest in securing their raw materials. They could have an interest also in investing on the production side. Just to give an example, but certainly any sort of rehabilitation or expansion in production has to be on commercial terms. So the other area where I think could be explored further is, apart from partnerships between chocolatiers and cocoa producers, could be special financing arrangements, long-term financing arrangements. Maybe this is one of the areas where maybe guarantees from the EU or special financial instruments developed to support this this need for significant expansion. And it's not just expansion in production, it's infrastructure, it's drainage, it's rural access roads, etc., that all support the expansion of the cocoa industry. But certainly I am promoting on a commercial basis, and definitely not on a purely a technical assistance or grant funding basis.
Thank you. Okay.
There were some questions from Marie as well.
Yes, I'm looking at it. Yes. Marie, one more question for you. What are you seeking in local partners? Do you have plans to license the biotechnology?
We are planning to build the biorefinery ourselves in the Caribbean. So, of course, what we are looking at is the investment for that infrastructure. And currently we are looking at partners for the value chain. So when it comes to harvesting of sargassum, and of course the logistics as well.
Okay, thank you. There was also a question on if there are greenhouse opportunities for cocoa. Is there someone who can answer that question? There are no agronomists on our team. So is there someone who can answer the question about greenhouse opportunities for cocoa?
Well, perhaps I can make a comment. My company's been involved. We own a cocoa estate. We've done rehabilitation in Trinidad and Tobago, and we developed value-added products, and I will make a presentation later on. There is a potential for carbon credits potentially in this area, and it's something that we are discussing in Trinidad and Tobago in both the cocoa and the chocolate industry. I don't think it's a major driver behind your revenues, but it could be a supplementary income. For, depending on how you maintain and the forest and so forth around the estates. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Lars. Thank you for that. And Lars is in the next breakout session. He's going to be the one making the introduction. There is another question here in support of Marie-Louise's Norton's comments. Belize would be interested also in joint ventures to rehabilitate the cacao farms in Belize. So expressing Belize's interest. So if there's any uptake on that, please go ahead. Good. I think we have, if I do not hear from my team, I think we have addressed all the questions at this point, that we can go to the next session. We are a little bit over time. This is how it's going to work. We will move to the sectoral breakout sessions, where you will have the opportunity to hear from EU investors on their experiences in the region. This is the time to connect with other participants, share opportunities for partnerships, and discuss challenges that you encounter in your specific sector. We've asked each speaker to touch upon the following in his or her introduction: briefly introduce their business, briefly outline the business opportunities in the sector from their perspective, explain something about their experience with the EPA, and lastly, number 4, to comment on the need, search, or experience with investors and partners in CARIFORUM. The speaker will provide a 10-minute introduction. This will be followed by 15 minutes of live discussions guided by a facilitator. 2 minutes before the end of the session, there will be a countdown, after which the session will end abruptly and you'll be moved back to the plenary session. So for closing remarks. So now may I please request that our IT support technician move everyone to their preferred breakout rooms. And I will see you in a bit. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Noel Watson, and I'm going to be one of the consultants on this project. So I'll be facilitating this session, working along with Simon Shaw, who is going to be the presenter. So Simon is going to start off with a brief presentation, 10 minutes, explain what he's doing. And I think he's doing work in Guyana and shrimp. And then we will open the floor for discussion on his presentation, but anything at all that people want to raise in the area of fisheries. And, even if we can't answer those questions, we'll try and get them to the persons that can answer. So Simon, are you here? See if they moved Simon to the wrong room. Our presenter is not here yet.
Yeah, no, they may have moved to the wrong room. I was also moved to the wrong room.
Okay.
But it's okay, I'll stay here. I was in food processing, but.
Well, would you like me to ask them to move you there, Mr. Forshey?
Oh, that would be great. But...
All right, I will ask.
I'm not running away. I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here.
I've also been moved to the wrong room.
Let's see. Who is that?
Drexter Charles.
Okay, Drexter Charles. Where do you want to go to, Drexter?
If I'm not mistaken, I saw fisheries, supposed to be agriculture.
Oh, you're supposed to be in agriculture. Okay.
Hello, sorry, this is John Quayle. I'm also supposed to be in food processing, so I've been moved to the wrong group.
What was that again, John?
It's John Quayle from Springboard. I should actually be in the food processing group.
Okay, so both you and Dexter should be in food processing.
Thank you.
So I think at the bottom of the Zoom, there's a breakout room tab, and you can press that and then join the room you want.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
So it says breakout rooms, and then
Thanks.
Welcome.
Beautiful. We should bring you on board for technical assistance, Todd.
Well, I'm quite good with my phone.
Simon there now?
Simon, I'm still looking for Simon.
Yeah, I went back to the main room and I told them to look for him and to make sure he comes into fisheries.
Yes, please.
Hey, Noel.
Hi.
I just spoke to Simon on the phone. He had to change. The internet kept dropping, so he came over to the cafe. He's signing in now.
He's signing in now. Okay, thanks for that, Yannick. Okay. Well, while Simon is coming on, we could start a little bit of a general discussion. I mean, do we have anyone here that's in fisheries or is interested in the area of fisheries, has any questions to ask, any concerns about the area, sees any opportunities in fisheries in CARICOM that they'd like to bring up before Simon comes in. He's going to talk about shrimp, as I said, but I mean, other people may have important issues. Simon. Welcome, Simon. We have with us Mr. Simon Shaw. He's from the European Union. He partners with a company called Safe Haven, and he's going to be talking to us about aquaculture in Guyana, where he's actually engaged in a major investment there. And so, Simon, when you're ready, you can let me know.
Yeah.
Okay, Simon. Okay, while Simon is getting ready, does anyone have any particular issues that they'd like to raise about fisheries in the
good morning.
Good morning, yeah.
Hi, good morning, Margaret Ventura from Belize. I heard you mention about the presentation coming up on shrimp. I just wanted to say that it is probably regionally known that Belize is a big producer of shrimp, but has been experiencing a number of problems with the farms being affected by disease. And also another challenge that we have had is with the type of feed that that works best in these farms. And I know also that we've been importing feed, and so I also was interested in whether there are some advances in that area. And in fact, I do believe that we can produce our own feed if we have the right resources. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
I'll actually ask Simon to address that one when he, after his presentation. Simon, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Can you see my, can you see the screen? I think I'm sharing it.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are seeing it.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late. We had a few problems with the internet this morning, which is one of the challenges we face in Guyana because the infrastructure is, let's say, developing. So to go on to the shrimp market, the shrimp market is a lot bigger than many people realize. So in 2022, last year, the global shrimp market was around $30 billion US, and it's predicted to be around about $75 billion by 2028. So it's growing rapidly. And if you look at what happened in Ecuador, for example, their shrimp industry has grown very, very fast over the last 10 years. So before we started farming in Guyana, we looked around the world at what the various fishing aquaculture practices were. Because the Guyanas are one of the few countries in Central America and the Caribbean that don't currently do commercial fish farming, we wanted to make sure we got it right. So we went to visit Panama, we went to visit Colombia, Suriname, we talked to people from Ecuador, and we concluded that the best fishing practice was the same as Indonesia. Guyana is on the same latitude as Indonesia. It has a very similar climate to Indonesia, so we selected a semi-intensive or intensive method for farming shrimp. So you can see from here, this is a survey done by a company called Hatch, where they looked at the different fishing practices. And you can see here that with a stocking density around about 130 larvae per square meter, you can get a 3 tons per hectare per harvest. And we would expect 4 harvests per year in Guyana, which so that means around about 90 to 100 tons per hectare. One of the big factors about Guyana is that it's closer to the EU than any of the major shrimp producers, being Ecuador, India, and Vietnam. A lot of people ask us why we're aiming to sell to the EU, and it's simply this, that we're closer to Europe, and that Ecuador, India, and Vietnam can fight over who supplies the United States. So there's a strong rationale to make sure that our farming practice, that our health certification is European based. So the benefits of Guyana are that you have a very stable environment. The temperature is between 25 and 28 degrees centigrade nearly all year, which is perfect for shrimp farming. You have plenty of land. There's a lot of abandoned rice lands and abandoned sugar estates. So even rice lands which have been flooded as a result of climate change, those lands can be repurposed to be shrimp farms. So the other benefits of Guyana is we have very strong support from the government and the Ministry of Agriculture in particular. They see it as a priority to develop the shrimp market. So we're one of the first, let's say, pioneers in the shrimp market. So we've been the benefit from support from the government. So, So the challenges in Guyana are, of course, access to finance. The banks are, let's say, a little bit wary about lending to agricultural projects. They have lent in the past and not had the greatest experience. So finance is quite a problem. The other problem we have is access to personnel and access to laboratory facilities. So we actually bring in personnel from Southeast Asia, and we have been sending things out to laboratories in Peru, in University of Arizona. So that's something that has to be developed. And as one of the previous speakers mentioned, is the feed. We buy our feed from Panama. So in the long term, that's not sustainable. We will have to find a way to manufacture feed in country, but we're a long way off that. And the other thing is the cold chain. There are very limited cold chain resources currently in Guyana. So we simply don't have enough capacity to export our produce. So this is another area which we'll have to work on. Having said all that, we believe that aquaculture is a real opportunity for the Caribbean. In fact, we're working with the government of Barbados, again with the government of Guyana, to develop a shrimp farm there. We've started up the first shrimp farm about a month ago. So they have shrimp in their ponds in Barbados, and hopefully in another 2 months, we'll be able to harvest those shrimp. So just that was the gist of my presentation, but just quickly for the interest of the people, I'll just go through what Hubu Aquafarm are doing. So as I said, we have a mission statement, which is we will not use antibiotics. We'll go for EU certification. We'll be recycling all our waste as fertilizer for horticulture, and we'll be looking to recover the chitosan from the shrimp shells to make packaging materials. So we have a hatchery near Parika in Guyana on the Essequibo River, and we have a grow-out pond further up the Essequibo River. So this is our first hatchery. This is the first hatchery, I believe, in the Caribbean. Most of the suppliers in the Caribbean procure their larvae from Florida. Again, we don't think this is sustainable in the long term, and the logistics of transferring larvae from Florida is fraught with problems. So we're using a mixture of above ground ponds that you can see here. These are very, very simple to erect. They take about a day each to erect. These are 40-foot diameter ponds. And we have at our farm in Hubu, we have 600 acres where we're building earthen ponds. So these are the earthen ponds. You can see here, these ones, this is a couple of months ago. These ponds are aligned with polyethylene, and we're waiting for some good weather to line these other ponds. So then we will have 12 acres of farm in operation. This is the operation in Barbados. You can see here we brought in the shrimp from Florida. We kept them in an observation pond for about a week, and this is when we transferred them from the observation pond to the main pond. We were quite fortunate; they'd grown and were quite healthy, and we had no mortalities. Again, on our farm, to use the waste, we're going to be building 4 acres of climate controlled greenhouses. So all of the liquid and solid wastes will be used in here. As it's quite a large farm, we'll be using agricultural drones to feed the shrimp. Again, because of the shortage of labor, we have to automate as much as we possibly can. And as I mentioned, from the shrimp shells, we'll be extracting carotenoids and the chitin and chitosan, which we can make packaging materials. So hopefully our shrimp will be packaged in their own shells. Another thing we're doing is we have done quite a bit of research on different algae cultures. Again, the reason is that we want to inoculate the ponds with algae, not just to feed the shrimp, but also to reduce our carbon emissions, because the algae absorbs quite a lot of carbon. In fact, an algae pond, a pond inoculated with algae absorbs about 20 times more carbon than forest. So it's a very good way to make our operations net zero. Again, we'll be processing our own shrimp on site. This will create quite a lot of employment in the local community. Our community is quite remote, and so employment opportunities are few and far between. So this will be welcomed by the local community. And again, to address the concerns of the previous, we want to build our own feed plant. We just cannot see that moving large quantities of feed around the planet is a good idea. So we're looking at building a modularized feed plant on site, and we're also looking at the possibility of using single cell protein. Guyana has the benefit of having natural gas, so we're hoping to take some of that natural gas and turn it into a synthetic protein for use as feed. So that's the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. That's very, very interesting.
I'm sorry, I went through it rather quickly because I was expecting a lot of questions.
Well, I'm going to open the floor now so that you can have some questions. So colleagues the floor is open if you'd like to ask Simon any questions, and you can just state who you are and any level of interest that you may have in the whole fisheries and shrimp industry.
Good day, Simon.
Hello.
Good to hear from you, and it was an excellent presentation. And of course, we'll be getting back to you soon.
Okay, thank you
very much, Todd.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Simon. I just have a couple of questions. The shrimp farms, are they located in near or using blackish water and mangroves? Because I know that was an issue at some point in Ecuador.
No, we will not cut down mangroves. Our farm is located, shall we say, inland. We use water from the Boas. There's a water conservancy scheme in Guyana, so we use fresh water from the water conservancy, and we add salt that we import from Dominican Republic. We found that it's actually it's easier for us to use artificial seawater, so we make our own seawater, because the problem with the Essequibo River is that the salinity changes with the rainfall, with the tide, it's very difficult to take water from the Essequibo. The other thing is that the water from the Essequibo or the sea, there's a very high sediment load. So, treating that water is quite difficult. We have to add chelants, we have to filter it. So we actually find it simpler to use fresh water from the conservatories, which is essentially rainwater that's been collected, and we add salt.
Interesting, thank you.
And one of the things that we would never advocate is there's absolutely no need to cut down mangroves in order to do shrimp farming. I mean, we have mangroves in front of us, but we'll just leave them there.
Yeah, and just on a related question, what is sort of like the minimum size that could make an inland shrimp farming viable? So
Well,
the minimum size.
I mean, it's really it's governed by what you want to do and how much you have available. There is a gentleman here who is actually growing shrimp in IBCs. He's got 5 IBCs, these plastic bulk containers. So he has 5 of these in his back garden, and he's growing shrimp in those. So there is no real minimum size. I mean, I think for the commercial reasons, I think that the minimum size that we would consider is about 10 acres. But having said that, the farm we're doing in Barbados is 2 acres. I mean, it's a pilot scheme. It's being used to train people. But once we've got that project up and running, we're looking at doing another 10-acre farm in Barbados. But there's no minimum size.
Yeah, not to dominate the conversation, but I know there's supposed to be significant efforts in the rehabilitation of quarry lands, and consideration has been made to rehabilitate, I mean, among reforestation, also with regards to aquaculture, with quarry lands.
Well, the only problem with quarries is that you're dealing with rock, so it makes your civil works much more expensive and difficult. The ideal place is on clay soils. So for us, the best place to go is rice land that's been damaged by flooding, because we can rehabilitate the rice lands quite easily. I mean, one of the problems we have in Barbados, for example, is that every time you dig a hole, you find limestone rock. And underneath the limestone rock are a lot of limestone caves, so that there have been ponds that have actually collapsed into the limestone caves.
Simon, may I ask you a question? Sorry. No,
Please,
is it okay?
Please, Maria.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually very interested in 2 things. First being the shrimp feed that you mentioned, and as I don't know if you heard my presentation earlier, but we have this biomass residue which is left behind after the refining, and we use micro and macro algae as a feedstock, and we'll be using that residue as a cattle feed and as a fish feed. So I think that would be very interesting for shrimp as well, so that you can use it to form pellets, and at the same time it has a very nice amino acid profile, which I understood that for shrimp is something important. So I would like to discuss that with you as well. And then the other thing is that you mentioned that you are cultivating microalgae, so nanochloropsis, for example. Do you measure how much of nutrients you actually remove with the cultivation? Because that's, I think, is a beautiful thing. What you have is that, because the shrimp farms are, of course, producing quite a lot of nutrients, so as the fish farms as well. And I think the combo of having the algae cultivation within the let's call them a wastewaters, there has been a very interesting studies around that as well. So if you can comment on the nutrient removal capacity of the microalgae and stuff.
Okay, so, sorry, just a warning that in 30 seconds we'll move back to the main room. So this we have to wrap up. Okay.
Okay, I'll be very quick then. So the first concern we have with the sargassum is that when it was measured in Barbados, they found that it had quite high heavy metal content, particularly mercury. So that is one concern for us because the mercury will bioaccumulate. The second one is that the most promising algae that we've found is actually Chlorella vulgaris, because the chlorella not only has a very high lipid content, it also sequesters more CO2 than Nanochloropsis, for example, about 3 times more CO2 accumulation than Nanochloropsis. I mean, we're not at the end of this. We only started this research into algae last year, so we wouldn't say we're experts. We have a long way to go. Culturing algae is a lot more complicated than it first appears.
We know that.
So anybody getting into it, beware. It's a hole where you pour money and you get green slimy liquid from it.
Yeah, I would like, Simon, if we could have a chat about the sargassum, because in our case, it goes through the refining. So the problems you mentioned, they are basically eliminated from the residue. So if I can just send you a mail, so maybe we can have a chat.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the organizers have my mail. Please feel free to contact me. We'd be very interested to talk to anybody who can help us make our operation more sustainable. You know, we were actually looking at trying to make a packaging material from sargassum. Because we want to, you know, our idea is we make trays out of some bio waste, and then we use the film made from chitin to pack the shrimp.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
We have about a minute and a half. Does anyone else have anything else for Simon?
Just to say thank you for your excellent presentation, and like Marie, will be in touch separately, but I think this has been very beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we hope that this is something that can go some way to solve the protein problem in the Caribbean, because you know, chicken and beef are not really sustainable when compared to shrimp.
My name is Denise Leander. Hi, Simon. Good presentation. I was actually going to ask you about your employment issue that you have and how you think that would be, how you could solve that, given that you're in such a remote part of Guyana.
Well, our employment policy is that we are first trying to recruit single mothers. The reason for that is because they turn up to work every day. And there are a lot of single mothers around where we are. So we're actively trying to recruit at the moment. And we've been, I think we've been quite successful. I think our staff we have very good people working for us now, but it's taken a long time to get these staff, a lot longer than we expected. It's one of our critical issues. You know, biosecurity and staffing are the two things that we have to be very careful about. And also, you know, for our technicians, I'm afraid we just have to bring the technicians from Southeast Asia, because there's nobody in
the fisheries group, and that we got cut off, but I mean, we knew it was coming. So we just want to thank Simon so much for that excellent presentation.
Thank you.
If Tamir is talking, I'm not hearing her.
No, I'm not talking. Is everyone back in the room? Ash, is everyone back in the room? Noel, you're muted. I'm hearing.
Yeah, we have
everyone's back. Yeah.
Okay, so we can continue or head for the closing remarks. I hope you had a good breakout session. Thank you everyone for your participation. I hope they were helpful and insightful. Always was in any case. We are reaching the end of the webinar, so allow me to make some closing remarks based on our discussions today. The first one is that we've seen many concrete business opportunities for EU businesses and CARIFORUM. You can invest or do business with CARIFORUM exclusively to earn a return on your investment, or to help with SDGs, or to help with food security. There are opportunities to invest or do business for export that are growing in popularity: cocoa, coconut, ergassum, avocado, shrimp, etc., as well as foodstuffs. And we can think about liquor, again, chocolate. No one mentioned medicinal cannabis today, but that is one. You can choose to do business in order also to enjoy the way of life. In our group, someone mentioned that. And you can choose to invest or do business with the Caribbean, or a combination of all three. The European Union has high quality and competitively priced end products, inputs, and know-how, which CARIFORUM needs. EU business to business are of superior quality and comply with CARIFORUM standards. EU B2B products are of superior quality and comply with CARIFORUM technical standards. So there's the opportunity, not just the opportunity in the market, but also you have a good product. And I'm glad that the Green Deal was mentioned, also this green and sustainability laws in Europe. The Euro Chambers of the Dominican Republic and Trinidad and Tobago, as well as their members, stand ready to assist the partners and partner with EU businesses. In addition, there are myriad business events. We did not get to that, but there are myriad business events in the region that you can attend. Like for any opportunity, there are challenges. The fact that not all countries have implemented all EPA commitments the same, that's one of the challenges. For some markets, there's a lack of connectivity, transportation between the markets, and linkages with international markets. So that is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. In some markets, there's limited land and or human resources and know-how. That's also an opportunity. You can turn it around as an opportunity. And there are challenges with regard to financing and guarantees. In our session, we heard of not so much innovative ways, but a different way of thinking to get in financing. So instead of just looking at your island or your country as your market, start big, start looking, for instance, at Europe as your market, because then you get European investors. The EPA offers measurable advantages to EU stakeholders wanting to do business in CARIFORUM. Several EU companies have already taken that advantage. We have received lots of proof of this from the Dominican Republic. So the time is now for to do business between the EU and CARIFORUM. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of this event. It was my pleasure. I do need to say a few more things before I end. The first thing is to the brochure. Please look in the chat. There is a brochure, a link to the brochure. The email of the EUD for queries about the EPA are also in the chat, so please do that. And the next webinar will be the webinar on infrastructure and utilities. Please watch out for that. And also there's an evaluation survey coming in the chat. The link is in the chat. So please do the evaluation survey. It is very important for us and for the EUD to see what you thought about this webinar, and if it is, if you would recommend it to others. Is there something else that I need to say, my colleagues? If not, then I will move to the closing words. Thank you for your cooperation to all of you. We will email all registrants the presentations that are made today, so you can also get the information, but also the email addresses. You will also get the recording of the webinar, as well as the full report on the topic once it's been published. If you have not already done so, please download the brochure in the link provided. We hope to see you at the next event on Trillion investment opportunities in infrastructure and utilities. It's on infrastructure and utilities. Please follow the Barbados EU delegation Facebook and Twitter accounts for more updates. It was my pleasure. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye for now. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye now. Thank you for the lovely presentations and your great work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great.